The sky so far, but I can't lose it.
Wreck avoidances.
Stay low. He's high, stay low.
Daring passes.
Outside. Oh, you're going to get him.
Silly jumps.
Oh my god, a drive-through.
The thrill of victory.
They're against the wall. Good one, Mark. Stay low.
And the occasional mishap.
My sim crashed.
This is the DMLC Racing Channel.
A new beginning with familiar faces. For the first time, Lionheart is going back to its roots. 18 races to determine who is the best and the most exciting form of auto racing on the planet. 200-mile-an-hour Indy cars, inches from disaster or glory. There can only be one inaugural champion, whose name will be etched into the Lionheart history books. Find out next. The Lionheart Speedway Series, presented by DMLC Racing Channel, starts now.
Just a week ago, the Lionheart Speedway Series debuted in the land of the rising sun. And after a hectic 200 miles of action, it was first-time Lionheart winner Dean Moll in HyperX Victory Lane. We travel across the globe to the Lone Star State and the Texas Motor Speedways to do things Texas style here at the DMLC Racing Channel 200, presented by SimSnap Photography. Welcome back to RaceSpotTV and continued coverage of the Lionheart Racing Series powered by HyperX. The Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit www.hyperxgaming.com and don't forget to use promo code Lionheart15, that's LIONHRT15, for 15% off all orders. My name is Arjuna Kenkipati, and alongside, as always, is Justin Prince. TV cameras are provided by Istvan Ballo and TrackCams22.com, with live timing and scoring powered by our partners at Timing71. Let's dive straight into our SimXperience countdown to green, because the SimXperience AccuForce Pro V2 is the premier professional simulation racing steering system. The key to its incredible realism is the groundbreaking direct drive motor control system, providing a driving experience that's second only to the real thing. For more information on the entire SimXperience ecosystem, visit SimXperience.com. Justin, last week it was frantic, it was hectic. We head to the Lone Star State to do things slightly bigger, and you know what? I think it might just be even more hectic than we saw 7 days ago.
Crazy speeds here, seen with 25-second lap times of more than 210 miles an hour throughout the corners. It's going to be a tricky race to say the very least, especially these hectic speeds. It's also been tricky for several drivers to be able to make their way down to the pit lane here today, especially with the troubles of the apron in turns 3 and 4. But Twin Ring Motegi brought its interesting challenges of strategy and pit entry. I think those same storylines get even bigger tonight here in the Lone Star State.
It's going to be a very exciting race today. Some big crashes last time, and a first-time winner in the Lionheart Racing Series, but some familiar names at the top of the standings as well. These are the drivers' standings presented by the DMLC Racing Channel, and Justin, 62 points then to Dean Moll, but Adrenaline Motorsports, they did not enjoy qualifying too much, but all three of their drivers in the top 6 as things stand.
And keep in mind, for those drivers from Adrenaline Motorsports, there was the mix of strategy for them as well as in the case of Tony Schoen in particular, he tried to plow his way through the field in the late stages with 10 laps to go. Many of the drivers tried to gamble and stay on old tires. Several different drivers took tires for those closing stages. Several did not want to see a late race caution with it being so tight on the fuel as well in that race. So keep an eye on those drivers. It could see a lot of shuffling after tonight based on some of the front runners that took part at Twin Ring Motegi.
Lots of rookies as well. Before we talk about our Rookies Championship, let's talk about the Teams Championship presented by HyperX. Adrenaline Motorsports, well, they've got a little bit of an advantage. The one thing you notice here, Justin, is the top 5 teams have started to build a little bit of a buffer, and, you know, it's only the second race of the season, yes, but you cannot afford to let that deficit build up too much just yet.
And some of the race first drivers had some rough races, to say the very least, over at Twin Ring Motegi, with some of them getting involved in contact, especially in turn 4. Some of them were involved in the pit stop trouble, in fact. For Adrenaline Motorsports, they were consistently some of the quickest drivers on the racetrack, even if they didn't have the necessarily track position in that race. So I think those teams, especially up towards the top, are going to be also consistent here at Texas Motor Speedway, though. That's the big thing. It's also going to be important for those said drivers to stay out of trouble today here at Texas.
You can see shots of the cars in practice. 5 minutes still left before we work our way into qualifying. Let's take a look at these Rookies Championships standings presented by Butt Kicker. Dean Moll is at the top. I don't know if those points are 100% right, to be honest, Justin, but Alexander Van der Sant, 9th place in the overall championship, 4th place in this one. There are some big names, some interesting names, the likes of Matt Taylor and Matt Wagner, who we saw at the front of the field of Motegi on occasion, are very excited about a very strong class of rookie drivers in the Speedway Series.
Absolutely, and keep in mind there were several rookies who had struggles, like Adam Young, like Tyler Graff, like Marco, like Paul Jenkins, who had some good speed in the race, just didn't have good luck at Twin Ring Motegi. And for others, they could have been much higher in the rookie standings, if not at the overall standings, if it wasn't for the fact that a couple drivers went above the blue cone in the commitment line coming out of the pit exit for that final pit stop. So those types of rookie mistakes you cannot afford to make here at Texas Motor Speedway tonight if you want any shot at not just the rookie standings, but the overall championship, I think, for today. This is going to be the type of track you do not want to have a similar brain fade.
Great shots of these cars in practice. They're working on these restarts. You can see 3 wide. They will be hectic, and we are racing at the Legacy Texas Motor Speedway. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Let's talk about these series details presented by the premier name in karting gloves, Minus 273. Their industry-leading gloves are super lightweight and durable, made of breathable poly spandex. Whether you're a kart or sim racer, Minus 273 gives you the control to reach victory lane. For more information on Minus 273's full line of gloves and apparel, visit minus273.biz. And don't forget to use promo code minus273LHRS15 for 15% off all orders. And $7,000 in cash and prizes on the line here, Justin, but we talked about this a week ago. Custom fixed setup, and unlike in the Lionheart IndyCar series where the Dallara IR18 has been opened up so drivers have in-car tools, this is all about the driver. How do they use what they have at their disposal? No in-car tools, no ARBs, no weight jackers. They have got to drive the wheels off these cars.
And it's going to be important to make sure they know how to drive these machines with their feet in particular to make it around the corners. Know how to have proper throttle control here in this series as a result with the custom fixed setups. And that's where the strengths of both veterans and in some cases some of the series rookies come into play, where it evens it out a little bit based on some of the drivers who may be used to those assists now with the modern day cars. But keep in mind, this is going to be tricky in that for both the veterans and the rookies, this is the type of racetrack where speeds will not likely drop below 205 miles an hour, let alone 210, unless you have to come down to the pit lane. So it could be tough for both veterans and rookies alike to be able to make your way around Texas Motor Speedway tonight.
Insane speeds on offer. Let's talk a little bit about the event details. This did not run in the inaugural series of the Lionheart IndyCar series, but every year after that, from seasons 2 through 5, while the DW12 was in competition, this track was visited. You can see a big disparity in the most versus fewest number of cautions. The interesting thing that catches my eye here, Justin, the pole sitter has won 6 out of 7 races in history here. It is not a track where you necessarily see too many passes at the front of the field.
That's going to add extra emphasis on qualifying, I think, as a result, to be able to have track position, because it's going to be very tricky to pass here, especially how drivers fare around these corners, since it's a bottom-dominated racetrack, even with the 24 degrees of banking here at Texas Motor Speedway. Keep in mind as well that the last time this series came here with the DW12, it finished under caution here in the Lone Star State. So there's the chance of crazy starts and restarts, I think, as well, though, Arjuna, because in these practice starts and restarts, several drivers have had trouble making their way through the front stretch, in particular, in the quad oval, either towards the start and finish line or coming out of the quad oval with the runs they're trying to carry into turn 1.
And it is a unique oval, isn't it, Justin? Because, like we said, we are visiting the legacy Texas Motor Speedway. Take a look at this track map. It is a quad oval, 1.5 miles in length. Now, that's disputed between NASCAR and IndyCar. IndyCar maintains it's about 1.44 miles. The pertinent point here is, with the legacy configuration, banking is very much different, Justin, to the modern incarnation of the Texas Motor Speedway.
The modern incarnation ended up reconfiguring turns 1 and 2 just a few years ago to make it more flatter and lowered the degrees in banking to 20 degrees with a wider corner overall. But not today. We'll see that configuration today. We'll be seeing 24 degrees of banking at both ends of the speedway. So, match speeds for those respective corners, but it's about how you handle the corners. That's going to be so critical for our drivers today, because it's going to be much more tighter for our competitors coming off 3 and 4 with that run up to the quad oval. It's going to be a challenge, to say the very least, to make sure you get that valuable track position, though, in qualifying today.
Qualifying underway as well. What perfect timing that was. Solo car qualifying, 5 minutes on the clock. You get 2 laps to do or die here in the Lone Star State. Some new names to watch out for today. There's also some drivers who will not be participating in qualifying. They have penalties from the last race. Let's give that update right now, Justin. That is Christopher, as well as Big Joe Hassett. We saw Joe make that mistake on pit entry that really caught out a number of cars. Chris made contact with a lapped car coming out of turn number 4. Both of those cars back of the field for the start of this race.
And that's going to make it so much more difficult for them to try and get valuable points here. As we talked about, normally the leader is the one who's in the best hands here. But you talked about newcomers as well. It's going to be interesting to keep an eye on a couple of the newer drivers coming in here, Arjuna, especially the one we're on board with a ton of sim racing and some real-world experience.
And the sim racing experience is not necessarily on the iRacing.com service, but if you recognize the name Barrett Rolfe, it's because he's a former GT Academy competitor, and like you say, Justin, one of those drivers blurring the lines between virtual and reality. He sits provisional pole position, but Trevor Malone takes it away with a 24.730. What will the lap time be then for Rolfe on his second lap time around? Jumps him up into second position. 300 separates him and Malone. Like you said, Justin, excited about his potential here. I don't know how much oval experience he necessarily has because, of course, GT Academy was a road-based series.
Keep in mind, he's been racing a lot of open wheel series if you follow along with him on social media as well in preparation for things. And as well, he's hoping to make his way to the highest level of Lionheart's racing series action with the IndyCar series by 2022. So he's got some goals in mind, showed up a lot of excitement to say the very least, Arjuna.
Yeah, really has. On board, by the way, with series organizer Jorge Anzaldo. First thing you'll notice, Justin, we were talking about this just an hour ago in the broadcast that we were on before, but all of the Dallara open wheel cars now have realistic head shake, and you can see the head bobbling around, not just from the bumps in the surface, but also the wind here at Texas Motor Speedway. It's a really interesting addition, and I really do enjoy the continued updates that we get from the iRacing team.
It adds to the realism absolutely here for when it comes to open wheel racing with the G-forces as well these drivers carry around this racetrack. It's going to add that little extra bit more realism for those watching along, but once again, I'm noticing a trend here for some of the drivers from Adrenaline Motorsports struggling again in qualifying. Joe Branch, 13th.
Well, Branch in 13th, his teammate Shawan is second, so struggles for one, not so much of an issue for the other. One driver, by the way, that I've been trying to keep my eye out for here, Justin. We are going to be graced by the presence of Season 4 Lionheart IndyCar champion Jake Wright, making a return to this competition. He actually won here in Texas in his championship winning season as well. Mark Cohn has provisional... Oh, he's got second place actually right now. Difference there between those two drivers. 1,000th of a second at the top of the timing sheets. I am watching though, Justin, for Wright to be a big factor here today.
And as someone who's seen him as well on the racetrack in various different types of open wheel machines, from the classic machines to this DW12, he's going to be very quick today. It's just a matter of where things shake out for him. He's someone that usually likes to work his way through some of the traffic, have a bit of fun with things though, so he might be someone to keep an eye on from towards the back of the field. Some other drivers keep in mind, like Alexander Van der Sant, for example, they just raced at the Nordschleife for just a little while ago for those drivers where he was one of your biggest movers, in fact. He had a lot of fun. I think tonight's going to be a lot of fun once again for the 97 and the rookie.
He was very impressive, and as he comes through towards the start-finish line, 30th provisionally, what will the lap time be for Van der Sant? He puts himself up into 9th, and with 30 seconds left in qualifying, doesn't look like too many cars still out there on track. We're not seeing lap times come in from the likes of Adam Young, Chris Stouffer, Jake Wright, Joe Hassett, AJ Musselman, Matt Houston, and Jim Brooks. So a number of cars electing to start at the rear of the field. Justin, very quickly, expectations as we get ready to go racing.
I think we're going to see a wild race tonight with the hectic speeds as well as the hectic traffic. It could be trouble in the quad oval today on some of these restarts and early on. Once things spread out, though, I think that's where some of the drivers may get into a rhythm here. Keep an eye as well on that pit entry as drivers have to communicate well to make sure they keep clean. Arjuna.
Let's go trackside and take a look at our butt kicker starting grid, and it's the teal number 69, Trevor Malone, that takes pole position here in the Lone Star State. 24.730 and just 1,000 separating the front row. Mark Cohn on the outside in the number 39 car, and then row 2, Alexis Newsom with a very impressive run up into 3rd, alongside Tony Shawan in 4th. Chris Lanini in 5th, Ron Hacker in 6th position as we work through row 3 of this grid. Big field, 40 cars almost taking to the green flag. Matt Wagner, Emerson Santos on row 4. Alexander Van der Sant and Barrett Rolfe, newcomer to the series. They share row number 5 with Mike Rigney, Chris Fowler, 2 series regulars behind them. Jason Galvin, much better qualifying this time. Matt Taylor alongside Vern Hawkins, Charles Teed on row 8, and then row 9, George Anzaldo and Luis Gonzalez Nunez. Last week's race winner Dean Moll, lots of work to do back in 19th position. Alex Gouillon in 20th, Craig Forsyth, Eric Schauff, row 11, DJ Clark, Joe Branch on the next row of the grid, James Krahula, Ken Hacker, Paul Jenkins, and then Jeff Murray, Dustin Wardlow, Jeff Seong. The top 30 cars separated by just 1/10 of a second here. Brett Bennett, Christopher Krisge, Tyler Graft, and then you have your non-qualifiers. Jake Wright, AJ Musselman, Big Joe Hassett, who will have an end-of-line penalty, as does Chris Stouffer, Matt Houston, Adam Young, and Jim Brooks rounds out the 40-car field. Quick update, by the way, from you, Justin. You've been talking to some of these drivers. Some of them going to drop to the back very early on.
Adam Young in particular said that's exactly where he wants to be. Just seen him in 39th position for tonight's starting grid. And based after the practice races, he feels like there's going to be some attrition today. So this is going to be one where there is that chance for tonight. Based as well on some of the practice runs these drivers took part in, it could be a tricky one here in the big Lone Star State.
We've got some onboard cameras, so let's work through them as quickly as we can. First up, it's Matt Taylor. He's got the HyperX onboard camera. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers, and HyperX is always ready to game.
Adam Young just so happens to have your minus 273 on board. Minus 273, the premier name in karting gloves. Visit www.minus273.biz.
Dustin Wardlow has the Espos Design on board. Get yourself a racing identity. Visit Espos Design on Twitter.
And with the DMLC Racing Channel on board, it's none other than Mark Cohn. The DMLC Racing Channel, your home for the best sim racing videos online.
At DMLC Zone, starting on the front row, that will be a great look on board. The former Lionheart Retro Series Driver of the Year starts on the front row. We get ready to go 200 miles here in the Lone Star State. Competition, commitment, excitement. This is Lionheart, and we know 2-3 wide, that might be the expectation here today. The pace car about to pull down onto the safety of pit lane, and he leaves the field in control of Trevor Malone, and he'll bring us to the green flag here in the DMLC Racing Channel 200 presented by SimSnap Photography. Looks like a nice clean start, Justin. 2 wide between Shawan and Newsom at the front of your field. And you can see a little bit of separation now starting to form behind 7th position on back.
Yeah, already everybody jumping down to the bottom line a bit more calmer, let's put it that way, compared to some of the practices, because this is for the valuable points. But already some of these drivers looking to battle up towards the front a little bit and try and get to the outside line, in fact, to try and break away, because that top 7 is already pulled away by nearly a full second.
That's not necessarily what we expected as we complete lap number 2. 3 of our 200 miles are now done, and that gap, Justin, almost 0.8 of a second right now. They're not pulling up to the back of these cars, and the cars at the front very organized for the most part.
Now keep in mind, we were talking a little bit about our expectations. Keep in mind, 133 laps. Strategy could also come into play. Several drivers have to save about 13 laps of gas or so overall, or stretch it rather to about 13 laps overall throughout the race, throughout the start.
Oh, we got a caution.
We'll make to the end, and here comes trouble.
That's a big crash. Not sure who all gets involved in this one, but it looks like about 6 different cars. Tyler Graff, Joe Hassett, Ken Hacker, Luis Gonzalez Nunez as well. First caution then flies very early on, Justin, and as they were coming across the start-finish line, I saw 4 wide, and I started to get very, very nervous.
Throw that point out the window, and that's exactly what drivers were having in their practice runs just moments ago. Just a little bit of a loose bobble, I think, started from Enzardo, in fact, just up the road from a couple of these cars. Led to a bit of contact with the front wings, and then calamity by turn 1.
You can see Tyler Graff didn't have much time to react to that one. Let's see if we can jump on board with Big Joe Hassett here and get a better look at it up in front. You said it was Anzaldo, but you can also see Krahula getting involved. Hassett slides to the inside. I think Jake Wright goes airborne there for a second, Justin. There are many cars down on pit road right now.
Jake Wright amongst those big hitters, absolutely going to be huge for this race. We were expecting him to try and be up towards the front. That's not going to be the case now. A short day for the former champion. But here's exactly what I was talking about. Right here, there's a bit of a checkup, bit of contact wing to wing. That's what causes the calamity that builds up now in the grass. Those two slam tire to tire, and then as they come back up across the racetrack, that's where Carhu and the rest of the pack comes into play.
You can see, we'll get a good shot from this static camera. I think that's Nunez, who is already sliding. Might be Wright that makes contact with him. The end result then, Justin, already I think 4 cars retired from this race.
Not the way they wanted things to break down early on, and this has opened up the strategy floodgates possibly here with so many drivers having to get wing changes as a result here possibly is at least half the field has come down and elected to top off. As talked about, Arjuna, fuel was going to be a potential talking point. 13 laps the difference overall between making it and not making it at the start of this race. We just seen that come into play with the fuel stints expected to be 40 to 41 laps or so, similar to Twin Ring Motegi tonight.
Average consumption, about 0.3 of a gallon per lap, so it does start to open up the strategy, but you would still likely be a little bit short at this point, I would think, Justin. I'm now a little bit more curious. How did that group of cars start to form that breakaway? Was it just a little bit of a slow start for a couple of cars there, or are we going to see a bit of a trend now as we begin our single file restarts as well?
I'm curious about if we see this end up becoming the trend, because I think there was a great launch by that top 7 in particular. It's just once they got broken up in a little bit, I think that's where they started fighting a little bit, if anything, with Santos and company, where Santos just didn't get a good launch at all.
Let's see if we can grab a few more looks at this incident as we work under caution. This is Jake Wright, your Season 4 Lionheart Indy Series champion. He dives to the inside. You can, oh, he gets taken out from the side. That's what happens to Jake Wright in this situation, Justin. Let's take one more look at an incident here. I want to get the onboard with Gonzalez Nunez. We'll have to spool it back further because you could see there was contact coming across the stripe.
That was from Joe Hester, the contact coming in as he tried to avoid the trouble. It's one hard. Here's a look from Nunez meanwhile. You can see he's trying to work his way from the top line at the time, and this is where that bobble comes into play. He's the one who ends up hitting your race winner from last week and ends up getting spun around from behind. Hard contact that ends up in turn leading to the back wing damage on his machine.
I think we are ready, Justin, to come back to green flag racing. Pace car back down onto the safety of the pit lane. It's Malone from Tony Schowen, Mark Cohn, Alexis Newsom, and Chris Lanini, the top 5. Once again, a very interesting start there, Justin. 2 wide as we come across the line.
That's Jason Galvin and Matt Wagner, in fact, going side by side as Wagner just was caught sleeping. I think now that Galvin realized what happened there, just back in the line, back single file, and as a result here, things are shuffled apart, and now it's a 4-car breakaway instead of 7.
So once more, that breakaway is starting to become a factor. It's the top 4 that have scampered on away. It's Ron Hacker in 5th that now has Matt Wagner, Jason Galvin, and Chris Lanini swarming over his rear end. At the front, though, once again, Tony Schowen is not committed to really trying that high line. It's Cohn that's going to force his way all the way to the inside, getting very feisty out front. And Justin, this is what those cars behind need to see.
Yeah, if they fight a lot here, this is going to allow them a chance to try and reel them in. In fact, already reeled in 2 tenths, make it 3 tenths or so that time by. So Schowen trying to hold on to the top line, but Mark Cohn, remember, was very quick, Arjuna, last week. Had a great chance to be able to come away with victory until the craziness in the pit lane. He's going to be hungry to try and take this lead early.
He, based on social media, very much thinks he was in contention for a win. 2 wide, 3 deep, by the way. 5th on back as they come through turn number 1. Incredible stuff. And while the modern-day Texas Motor Speedway not necessarily known for IndyCar racing, Justin, the legacy version puts it on. And I do think these cars are going to start pulling up to the back of that leading group now.
And Sistriola featuring speed, and more speed at the forefront. But look at this for the race lead. Mark Cohen's been able to take away that bottom line and just at that quickly able to make an easy pass on the bottom side.
Does look as though, at least for now, low line might be preferable 4th and 5th. Gap now down to about 7/10 of a second. That's still squabbling very, very hard. More of a breakaway now behind them, Justin, because you can see 10th and 11th, the gap is 1.4 seconds. And then you have to go all the way back to 17th position to find Joe Branch, the first car that came down onto pit road.
And I think for those drivers, again, it's big picture racing here. They sacrifice track position to be able to try and top off on the fuel and be able to see what they can do, see if they can play the caution flags, right? Because the pit lane entries, from what I've seen from drivers, was treacherous for tonight, to where they were trying to peel off the banking and having to go down from 210 on the entry, quickly down to 50 miles an hour for the commitment cone. So that could be trouble, as speaking of Mark Cone, Trevor Malone's not giving up.
The teal and pink, no, not necessarily the most color coordinated if you ask me, but you know what, Justin? In each of the 3 Lionheart Racing series that Malone competes in, he's always a front runner on these ovals, and I don't count him out here. Cone does look like he's very, very strong, but Malone is hanging on very nicely and fending off the advances of Tony Schowen behind.
Malone, remember, was able to get a top 5, in fact, last round, as the pack is slowly but surely starting to close up. But how about 3 wide starting to come in as that 33 machine looks to poke underneath?
I think that was Matt Wagner in the middle. Barrett Rolfe down on the inside. First taste of Lionheart competition. Hope you're enjoying it, Barrett Rolfe. As Chris Lanini, Matt Wagner, they scrap it out for 8th position. Loving this action from the Lone Star State, Justin. And the best part is, it's up and down through the field. You've got these guys scrapping it out here. If we look at the front, you can also see a bit of a battle going on there. And of course, if you look at the edge of the top 10, we've got Alexander Van der Sant. He's hunting down Mike Rigney and Chris Fowler.
Rigney was among one of the quickest drivers in final practice as well for tonight, so still utilizing that speed in the 24.8s at the moment. But you can tell Van der Sant is just starting to get a little bit impatient as well, just wants to try and get to the point where he can build up a run on the 00. Just know where to go for these runs, because again, as we've seen, the bottom line is the line, and the Aero Watch is starting to really factor in for some of these drivers.
We are starting to see more and more single file at this point, Justin. You can see Cone is able to defend, and it's Alexis Newsom, another rookie to the series, that's ripping the outside line, and right now finding a lot of success at this point in time. Schowen, very comfortably in 3rd, and is sitting 2nd place in the championship, Justin. We talked about his issues in qualifying 7 days ago. No such issues here today.
Yeah, much quicker overall, but I think that's in part with just how tight qualifying was, and the fact that the best times were in those 24/7s for drivers on their own throughout much of the practice sessions throughout the week. So now I think that preparation is just coming into play to be able to get those hot laps in, and now the track position is putting them right in this mix of this fight. But give a shout out again to Newsom. Newsom struggled after a good qualifying session, Arjuna, in the first race of the season. Much better today.
I think that might be the story for a lot of these rookies, Justin, because qualifying is one thing, the race is another, and we've seen on a number of occasions here in the Lionheart Racing Series that you can qualify well, but once you get into these packs, how well can you hold on? Speaking of holding on, that group of cars, 5th on back, Justin, they're now only half a second away from the race leaders. They are storming up from behind.
They're slowly but surely creeping on forward. It's now down to about a 4/10 of a second or so difference between them at the moment. That's because, in part, drivers like Jason Galvin have been able to get single file. Ron Hacker, Rolfe has also been able to get by Chris Lanini as well to be able to close in, as there goes that gap. It's gone. The gap is gone.
The gap is gone. They're in the draft. This is going to become a very feisty pack that squabbles over the race lead. It's still Cone that hugs the inside line, but you are noticing now more and more, Justin, as you come out of turn 4, as you come out of turn 2, Cone is starting to slide up the track now.
I think that's much more so the tire wear starting to kick in, up to 2/10 of a second of fall off, and that might be just struggling to be able to keep that bottom line as well at the moment. Just trying to struggle to keep that right front tire up to wear at this point. Roberts, keep in mind, it talked about a little bit as well, Arjuna, the struggles in 3 and 4 as well with that apron to try to avoid clipping the apron. That time it looks like Cone pushes up the track a little bit, almost clipping the apron to 1 and 2.
I think it actually opens the door for Alexis Newsom. Shawan gets a bit checked up down on that inside line. Galvin, look at the momentum. He sweeps around the outside. Newsom's up into third. Can Galvin follow around the outside? No. Alexis Newsom, rookie in this series, not being phased by some of the biggest names in the Lionheart Racing series. And we've got some incredible action up in the field. Let's turn our attention back for just a second here, Justin, because we've got an onboard look with Matt Taylor, our HyperX onboard camera right now, and he's stuck all the way back in 16th, 17th position right now, and you can see that inside line is not working out for the 8 car.
Yeah, you can see right now just the momentum is just carrying the drivers on the outside on forward on the corner exits, because it works almost like a ramp with this banking here, right? Because the higher you go, the quicker you are off the corner exits. But the reason drivers like the bottom in the corners, not necessarily down the straightaways per se, is just the ability to be the shortest distance around here at Texas Motor Speedway. The bottom line starting to come back into play now as a result here for Taylor, finally back into a rhythm. Now that there was a bit of less air wash, it's Christopher going a little bit higher up, going a lane up and keeping the air off his front wing.
Well, Stouffer is now the highest placed car that came down pit road in our one and only caution in today's race so far. Working lap 27 out of 133. 200 miles on our agenda today. Stouffer with about 5 laps fresher rubber than the rest of the field, but 4 and a bit seconds back from the race leader, and not necessarily in the position he wants to be as Taylor looks to the inside. Back at the front, it's still too wide, too deep. Alexis Newsom has migrated down to the inside. Interestingly, Barrett Rolfe here has managed to leapfrog the entirety of those cars behind here, Justin, and this is where driver starts to come into effect. We talked about this. You don't have in-car tools. What can you do with your feet? Barrett Rolfe has found some speed.
And he's run various different IndyCar leagues to try and increase this speed and utilize this speed. And we've seen said speed now turn out for tonight. Again, making the top line work as Newsom clips the apron.
Loses a bit of momentum. Galvin will come around the outside, but Newsom will be able to hold on to 6th position. Question now becomes, can she avoid the type of fall and precipitous drop that she suffered last time at Motegi? Looks like Emerson Santos, by the way, has just gotten on past Ron Hacker. This is on 8th on back, Justin, and we talked about big gaps forming. Well, top 13 cars, they're just separated by about 3 seconds right now, and you know what? The likes of Matt Taylor, Chris Stouffer, they are closing in by about 1/10 of a second per lap at this point in time.
Yeah, and that's in part, I think, because they're all starting to work together, get single filed out. When they battle too much, though, is where they've lost a ton of the time back. The interesting thing is, too, the speed also is varying because these clouds over of the racetrack continue to fluctuate this track temperature. It's gone bouncing back and forth between 94, 96 degrees Fahrenheit throughout the night. That's 36 degrees Celsius right now that it just went up to. 24 degrees Celsius is the air temp at the moment. That's 76 degrees Fahrenheit. And this is going to continue to fluctuate as this night goes on and continue to fluctuate the amount of grip available for these drivers.
Oh, Barrett Rolfe has found some grip down on that inside. You know, he'll draft using the other blue machine in front of him. Malone still tries to find something on the outside line, but I wonder at what point, Justin, these cars start to think about coming down onto pit road. You can't be too wide when you brake and try and slow down. We saw some difficulties at Motegi last time. You can see a very aggressive cutoff there from Shawan, feeding dirty air to Barrett Rolfe. We're only about 10 laps or so from coming onto pit road.
And that's going to make the communication so vital here. If you do not communicate you're coming into the pit lane, that's where we might see a similar situation down the pit lane at Twin Ring Motegi, especially the pit entry with drivers spinning out. You cannot afford to not communicate that you're coming in at least, I think, a half lap in advance. So that's going to be very vital for these drivers to be able to communicate that over the radio or through text to say, this is my time to come in, to make sure they avoid that said trouble. Now, keep in mind, drivers did practice coming together in small groups. The thing is, as you said, you can't come in side by side or even make a quick reaction pit stop, so to speak, compared to, say, a stock car here you would see at Texas.
Well, the first thing that I've noticed, Justin, is we talked about the number of times the pole sitter has won the race. They haven't always led the most number of laps, but you know who's looking the most comfortable right now? It is not Trevor Malone. It is Mark Cohen at the front. We'll turn our attention back to the front as we see Tony Schowen and Barrett Rolfe still trying to find whatever clean air they can. But after disappointment last week and after being taken out by Joe Hassert's mistake, it is looking very promising for the DMLC's own Mark Cohen.
It's been looking very, very promising, but the momentum's also been looking really, really good for Rolfe as well throughout this entire race. The problem is, just cannot seem to get clear for third position. That momentum just getting held up on the corner exit to keep some space for that 31 machine. And that can be a little bit frustrating, but still in a great spot there is Rolfe, you have to say, with the momentum as well as the overall pace being shown by Barrett. +6 on the race.
Let's see if we can take a look at the movers and shakers. Left side of your screen, it only looks like Jason Galvin is being scored as up 7 positions, but you can fill us in on that, Justin, throughout the rest of the race, and we'll talk about it more, especially I think in our post-race show, because Texas has produced some rather insane IndyCar races in the past, including a rather memorable finish, I think, between Graham Rahal and James Hinchcliffe. The closest margin of victory in the Lionheart IndyCar series, though, Justin, is just under 0.2 of a second. Thinking about that, thinking about what we've seen so far, you don't want to be in the position Malone is in right now, coming to the last 5 laps of this race. You need to be out front. You need the clean air.
Clean air is so vital to make sure you can rotate the car to be able to properly carry the momentum. We've seen drivers have to be lifting off some of these corners because of some of the momentum, but hearing over the radio, the drivers are coming in the pit. Ron Hacker will open up the pit window from 9th position.
And you can see pitting off of turn 3 as well. Will he slow down in time? That's the first warning cone. That's the commitment cone. That's the speed limit as well. Ron Hacker, the first car, then down onto pit road. A little bit early there, Justin, given that he didn't come down in our first batch of cars. So I am expecting at least 3 more laps, I would say, from the cars at the front of the field. One thing we should point out, gaps are starting to form once again. 4th and 5th separated by 0.8 of a second. 6th and 7th separated by over 1 second now.
That's important, I think, because Galvin's been fighting a little bit with Newsom as well to try and clear on by, and every time that Galvin's nearly got clear, Newsom's been able to go for the crossover back. But you can see right in front of your race leaders, traffic starting to form up.
Ooh, Malone! Malone's coming down onto pit road. That is going to be speeding. Surely, Justin, late decision for the number 69 car to come down onto pit road. And I have a feeling Trevor Malone has just thrown away his chances at victory here in the Lone Star State.
It's more so the concern, I think I would have to say, when it comes to that first commitment cone, possibly. We'll have to wait and see for Malone. That was very dicey, and we said it, we can't see drivers make those quick reaction calls without risking major trouble. For Malone is getting held up in the box. Malone is getting held up.
Malone is still stationary as well. This is a long, long wait. And of course, Justin, because he'll be taking service as well, this will be a penalty that will end up meaning he spends almost about 50 seconds stationary on pit road.
Absolutely huge for Malone. Unfortunate, after having a great shot at winning, now is going to, at the very least, lose a lap here. Unfortunate, to say the very least.
Interestingly, Schowen, Newsom, Galvin, they're all still out there working lap 45, Justin. I wonder if Schowen was just doing some very considered fuel saving when he was sat back there in 3rd position. What are the lap times going to be, though? 25.267 for Schowen that time across the line. Newsom is down. Galvin is down. It's now just Schowen, Stouffer, Rigney, and Matt Taylor who have yet to come down onto pit road. And in fact, Chris Stouffer now up into 2nd position after being one of the first cars to come down onto pit road, Justin.
It looks like Schowen's going to come in right now, and a good solid pit entry this time, in fact, as well, hitting that pit speed as well. But to get back to Chris Stouffer, Stouffer's in a good spot potentially here on how things shake out. If he can save enough gas here in the next couple stints, it's going to be tight, similar to Twin Ring Motegi a little bit, but might be in a good track position state for the closing stages. As a couple drivers should note, overran the pit boxes. Matt Taylor overran his stall going into the pit lane.
There you saw a look at Malone feeding out behind his competitors before. He is laps down now, Shawan out of pit road. Where is Mark Cohn? Where is Barrett Rolfe? They're diving their way into turn number 1 side by side. And for Barrett Rolfe, first time in this series, Justin, what a debut it's been for him. They will feed out, though, right behind Tony Shawan, who now has that clean air.
And for Mark, it was a great pit exit, but they are at full speed, which is not going to help them a little bit. Shawan cannot hold on here and defend this as they just pass by on the high side.
Interestingly, what does Malone choose to do here? Because you know what, Justin, if I'm Tony Shawan, Malone is down not 1, not 2, but he's down 4 laps at this point in time. You might be asking him to maybe be a bit more respectful here and not really fight too hard. You can see Rolfe and Cohn do not want to have too much of this either.
Yeah, this is frustrating as a driver to have a driver multiple laps down in the midst of a battle for the race lead. So at this point, if Malone's got the pace, I'd say just let him go at this point if you have the opportunity. Yes, there's the dirty arrow wash, but at this point, it's better than risking dicing it back and forth with Trevor Malone and risking an incident here, or in turn, losing you some time to the rest of the pack.
These guys will cycle back now to the net race lead as Joe Branch, one of the final cars coming down onto pit road. He builds up his momentum, builds up the racing speed. Top 5 as they stand. Mark Cohn, Barrett Rolfe, and Tony Shawan. They have a 1.3 second advantage back to Jason Galvin, who is scrapping it out with Alexis Newsom right now. And then you've got a further 0.8 of a second back from there. Now, Justin, the top 20 cars separated out by 10 seconds. Lap traffic, as we go deeper and deeper into this green flag run, is going to be an increasing factor to deal with.
Yeah, you see that traffic right now trying to stay, for example, to the top line. Actually sets up a battle for the lead.
Rolfe around the outside, Rolfe down the inside on Mark Cohn. Can he get to the race lead for the first time today? At the line, I do think it's Cohn who has scored in the race lead, but it's Trevor Malone who is still being that annoying little hornet in the nest, excuse me. Rolfe slides his way to the race lead, and once again, I do pose the question here, Justin. Is anything being said over the radio at this point about what Trevor Malone is doing?
Nothing yet, but at this rate, something you'd have to think would go towards that direction here, especially with how aggressive it is at this moment again. Malone is currently scored 3 to 4 laps down, and this has now allowed a couple more drivers to slowly creep on forward, Galvin and Newsom. The thing is there going to be enough momentum to be able to build up if this continues to go the way it's looking like? It's going to be the biggest question.
Rolfe at the line now leads. They've got clean air in front. The worst part here, if I'm Tony Shawan here, Justin, is I'm starting to get frustrated. That dirty air is definitely having an impact, and for a driver who is doing a lot of fuel saving, he cannot afford to lose the draft from Rolfe and Cohn in front.
Yeah, this is where I think right now you need to be able to pass on by. This is the most frustrating part, again, once of things. But you can see the amount of runs in the defense coming in from Rolfe and company. This is the one thing I think that's going to keep him into play here, for Tony at least, is those types of moves. Here we go again for the race lead.
Can Cohn make it work down on that inside line? Still relatively fresh tires, working lap 11 of the stint. Side by side, Cohn and Rolfe continue to do battle. And more interestingly, at least for me now, Justin, you can see Shawan is trying to find a way past Malone. Looks to the inside line. It's Cohn who's going to scoop his way back into the race lead. Can Shawan sneak down the inside here?
There's a possibility here. There's also the chance of saving off the back end of the machine, but again, right now, it doesn't help that Malone continues to be one of the quickest cars on the racetrack here, so this is going to be an interesting storyline. It helps a little bit that they're fighting on behind, and they're starting to break up into very smaller packs, down to about 2 or 3 cars per pack.
Yeah, that's definitely going to start helping them out. It's Galvin and Newsom in that 4th and 5th group. Then you've got Fowler, Santos, Van de Sant, Lanini, and Wagner in this subsequent group. We are, seeing some chatter, by the way, in our YouTube chat here, Justin. Let's talk about strategy. We were saying you might be able to cut a stop out if we go green to the end. You know who I think might be the only driver in that position right now? His name is Joe Branch. He is 8 seconds back from the race leader. But Justin, he is almost 5 laps fewer on his stint. Sorry, I had to make sure I phrased that correctly. 5 laps fewer as compared to the race leaders. That might get him to the end of this race if he can continue to save from those cars in front.
And that's why I thought coming in was huge at that time of the race during that first caution flag and set up a potential strategy to like we've seen at Twin Ring Motegi, because drivers had talked about even without the caution flag, some of the drivers who topped off early in that race or junior for the quick caution flag in that race could make it to the end. So for Joe Branch, he's hoping this continues to stay green the rest of the way, because now he doesn't have the track position. If there's a caution flag, he's going to be marked back in traffic. But all he needs to do is just save, run behind the rest of the cars, continue to just chug along and be patient at the moment.
This is a fascinating race, Justin. This is going to be something, because you've got that strategy element that's playing out. If you look further towards the front now, we're almost halfway into this race at this point. The laps are ticking on by. Malone is now at the front. He's feeding dirty air to the top 3 contenders. Shawan, at one point we were saying he might be cut adrift. Talking about fuel saving, he is how many laps worse off than his teammate? He's about 2 laps worse off. If he can do some heavy fuel saving right now, Galvin and Newsom are coming to join the party as well. Don't count out that second adrenaline car cutting out a stop as well.
Yeah, and saves a ton. Keep in mind that first stint, and that's why he was able to stretch it so far. Approaching 71 laps to go this time by as well, as I think right now the race leaders are finally going to be able to, at the very least, nearly break away from Malone at the very least here. And my thought process is, while there's the chance of the aero wash, use Malone to save fuel as well if you're the race leader here too, because Malone obviously has the pace to keep up. This is still frustrating though if you're a cone, because Malone's not letting up on that high side. He wants a lap back.
And for a race where the last time the DW12 came here, we finished under caution. We had 10 safety car intervention periods as well. This is fascinating. This is exciting. This is Lionheart. Don't go anywhere. We're going to continue coverage here live from the Lone Star State. We'll go side by side so you don't miss any of the action. We'll be right back after these messages from our partners.
Wreck avoidances.
Stay low. He's high, stay low.
Daring passes.
You're going to get it.
Silly jumps.
Oh my god, a drive-through.
The thrill of victory.
They're against the wall. Good win, Mark. Stay low.
And the occasional mishap.
My sim crashed.
This is the DMLC Racing Channel.
Right as we come back from caution, yellow flag waves. It's Alexander Van der Sant, Emerson Takashima, and a number of cars on the edge of the top 10 getting caught out in our second yellow flag here at the DMLC Racing Channel 200, presented by SimSnap Photography. Welcome back to RaceSpotTV, and Justin, what a time for us to come back, because we were entering what was going to be a very interesting portion of the race.
And now turns into a one-stopper because of contact coming off of turn 2. Chris Fowler on the bottom side. Emerson Santos on the high side in a battle for the top 5 collide and take several of your front runners with them as a result here, Arjuna. Vandersen, Lanini, Wagner, several others involved. And we talked about Joe Branchen's strategy. He got involved as well in the checkup aftermath. A major wreck coming off of turn 2 as several drivers go upside down.
Oh, sickening impact for a number of cars, and it doesn't end there, like you say. Joe Branch, Mike Rigney, Matt Wagner also involved. Let's take a look at the onboard look here, Justin, with Joe Branch. He tries to slow down. He's doing the right thing as much as he can, and what happens? Well, unfortunately, nowhere to go.
Yeah, track closes up just as he tries to get on the brakes. Unfortunate there, and that is the right thing. It's just the hole that he chose closed up quickly. And as a driver, you have to pick a lane. And the lane, well, the lane closed.
So a big shame there. You can see one more time, end over end goes Chris Lanini. I think the new damage model really is an upgrade, and that's what you can see in the Lionheart IndyCar Series. But like you said, Justin, big strategy implications. Cars in pit lane then. As we come back to live pictures, it's Barrett Rolfe, Tony Schowen, Mark Cohn, Alexis Newsom, and Jason Galvin, the top 5.
And an intriguing incident, to say the very least, as now the strategy's really wide open, Arjuna, on when these drivers come in here for their final stops. Obviously, these drivers will have to come down to be able to make it on fuel. The rest have already come down to make it on fuel the rest of the way. It's just a matter of when they come down after this under either green flag or caution flag conditions. This could be the determining factor of who's going to be able to win this race as a result here of who pits first now in this lead pack once we get back underway.
So we're working lap 71 out of 133. Doing some quick math, Justin. Let's say we come back in a couple of laps to green flag running. Roughly around lap, 115, let's say. It is going to be the literal definition of a splash and dash here. And, you know, if you're Tony Schowen, once again, fuel saving should be right on the tip of your tongue.
I think so. And I wouldn't be surprised to see drivers think about maybe thinking of splitting things as well and trying to get that undercut as well. It's going to be intriguing strategy on how this plays out, to say the very least. And keep in mind, it was about to be an interesting battle for the lead as well, right before that caution, Arjuna, especially with Malone still fighting with Mark Cohn, because both Newsom and Galvin were right back in the thick of things as a result of all that fighting at the head of the pack.
Yeah, they really were. Let's give you a bit of the update on movers and shakers. Barrett Rolfe now leads. He's up 9 positions, but if we had a hard Charger award to give out at this point, Justin, it really would have to go to Chris Stouffer. He started all the way back in 37th, end-of-line penalty and a qualifying penalty for a contact made last week, up into 7th. An incredible drive there. Jeff Seong right behind him, up 22 as well. You've got Brett Bennett. He's up 18 positions in 13th place. Another big mover, the likes of Adam Young, he's in 19th. Matt Houston up 18 positions in 20th. There are some very big movers, and you know what that means? Some very big losers as well.
Yeah, minus 28 for Trevor Malone, confirmed over the radio. It wasn't just speeding, Arjuna, it was an unsafe pit entrance for hitting that first commitment cone as well as we thought. So that's why he's currently the last car running on track. Santos minus 23, Vandersen minus 21 off the racetrack, Wagner off the racetrack after that flip minus 25, Lanini minus 29 as well, involved in an incident in 34th position. Charles Teed, who had a good qualifying run, minus 24 as well, Arjuna.
Yeah, that's a big shame. For Vandersen in particular, he had a great day at the Green Hell just an hour ago, and not how he wanted his second consecutive Lionheart race to end in that fashion. Barrett Rolfe, though, at the front of your field, and the Lionheart Series rookie, well, he's a GT Academy competitor in the past. He brings us back to the green flag, and already looks like Alexis Newsom trying to get the jump on Mark Cohn, and well, now, once again, Justin, we're already seeing this breakaway start to form. It will be interesting to see how it develops in these first couple of laps.
especially with the amount of momentum being carried forward, and this is not going to help to start off Newsom, electing to go up to the high side to try and carry that momentum. I think for Mark Cohn, he's going to be very aggressive, though, off the jump. We've seen how aggressive he was early on. A major run here to the outside.
He rips that momentum. He's going to get around Tony Shaw, and here's a second lap on this restart. Jason Galvin will also come around to that outside line. Cohn looks to the inside, unable to find any clean air, and now has to move himself back up to the outside line, Justin. You talked about the aggression. We are seeing that right off the bat.
Similar to what we've seen from the last race for Mark, in fact, when he went back and forth for Twin Ring Milteg in the early stages. But if I was him, just build up some momentum, get a line and build up a run. Right now, that's going to be hard. But they're now trying to go side by side, 2 rows deep. Jason Galvin wants to take advantage of this.
Well, you'll see as they come off turn number 4, once again, Justin, that gap between 5th and 6th positions up to about 9/10 of a second as side by side in all 3 groups. There's a gap forming as well behind, so once again these single file restarts are very much stretching out the field, and with 24 cars on the lead lap, lap traffic will start to be a factor once again once we hit, maybe lap 100.
Especially with the pace differential in terms of momentum, some drivers have been turning times 3/10 off the main pack, but that main pack is getting very dicey. Mark Cohn is now up in the front once again after, I think, Rolf elected to give him the space after he got a huge run to the bottom, and this is where it's been very defensive for the race lead. That 39 has not been willing to leave the bottom once he gets the race lead to give up that clean air.
Well, in terms of the strategy game that we're now playing, Justin, because that's what we are. Let's not miscount it. Let's not discount it either. It's very much who can save the most fuel in this stint, who will spend the least time in pit road, who is going to win this race.
Yeah, fuel is going to be very critical here, to say the very least. I think right now that if I'm Rolf, I'm saving and trying to make sure you hit that mark, absolutely. Jason Galvin's not saving, though. He wants the lead.
And we've seen him charge through the field before. He looks to the inside in the thumbs-up cancer down machine. Tries to get the move done on his teammate, Mark Cohn. The 39 and the 42 still side by side. Cohn tries to pinch Galvin off. Galvin slides up very slightly, Justin. As they exit turn 4, it's still Cohn who hands on, but Galvin side by side with Barrett Rolfe.
That LPM machine has been looking to have a good run and finally able to get one starting tonight. Had some good speed over at Twin Ring Motegi. And we know Jason Galvin can battle up at the front in races like this. This is not going to be easy, though, with how much Cohn's not electing to leave that white line down to the back stretch here at this racetrack. Keep in mind, Matt Taylor, he had struggles in the pit stop sequence under Green Arjuna, has worked his way to the head of the second pack in 6th position and is slowly gaining more momentum as they continue to fight in front.
And another driver up a number of positions. He's up 8 even with that small issue. You can see they are fighting side by side, Galvin and Cohn, for the race lead. That's bringing in the HyperX onboard camera that Matt Taylor brings into this race lead. It will be an interesting look as well. We haven't had such a great look from Mark Cohn's onboard camera, Justin. That's because, well, he's been leading for a lot of this race.
Yeah, and for good reason. He's been aggressive, he's been quick, and he's been not willing to give up this lead for anything today. How it works out for the strategy is the biggest question. As now Rolf looking like he wants to try and play leapfrog for second position, as that whole entire pack we just were talking about with Taylor and company, they're right there. And Vern Hawkins III is also coming to join them as well.
13 cars separated by under 2 seconds. That group of cars behind will start to catch up as well. Christopher Kresge in 14th position, not too far. 1.8 seconds as they battle side by side, not just at the front, but at the back as well. We are working then in towards the last stages of this race. 14 laps on the stint so far, Justin. About 25 to go until we come down pit lane for what will be the money stop.
And at this point, if you're Mark Cohn, this is the winning move potentially, is hold on and defend hard on the bottom of the racetrack and don't leave the bottom of the racetrack. That may come into play for the battle for the race win later on after those set pit stop sequences break out end form out. So I think we're seeing a preview of what you need to do if you want a chance to win the race. As trouble down the back straightaway.
It's Adam Young, it's Dean Moll. Last week's race winner, is going to be down on pit road once more. What a shame it is for the Synergy Motorsports driver. Missing a rear wing there, Justin. Let's spool up the RaceSpotTV replay. Third caution on the day.
And second incident that Dean Moll has been involved with, as well as for Adam Young. Been one of the big movers. They just converged coming off the corner, and hard contact for Adam Young to the inside wall as a result. I think Dean Moll, though, had ended up going a little bit lower than I think Young expected off the corner.
Yeah, it's just two goes into one, and at the type of speeds that we are working in these Indy cars, Justin, there's not much room for mistake, and unfortunately then for Adam Young, Dean Moll, they're down on pit road. Pit road is going to be busy. Mark Cohn stays out. Matt Taylor stays out. Everyone else down onto pit road, Justin. This is a very interesting call.
This is a dicey one here, where I think Mark Cohn, Matt Taylor, Gunyon are expecting more caution flags maybe if they're staying out here. Everybody else, it's going to be a fuel save type of situation possibly here, where it's going to be very tight. I'm not quite sure about this call here.
Race off of pit road then. It's only 4 cars that have stayed out. Cohn, Taylor, Guyon, and Anzaldo. Remember, by the way, live timing and scoring is available through our partners at timing71.org. Head over there to follow along with the best in the real and virtual worlds of motorsport using their world-class suite of data analysis tools. For Cohn, I am very interested in this call, Justin. 17-lap old tires. Everyone will still need a pit stop as well. Cohn's will be one of the longer stops, I'd assume.
Yeah, this is going to be where he obviously can't make it, I don't think, to the end here. So I think they're just he's banking on trouble to be afoot, to say the very least, in this race. So we'll have to see how it plays out here. This is one where you're hoping that trouble ends up striking behind you after a few laps, possibly.
And so I don't think the lights are off on the safety car just yet. At least one more lap under caution here, Justin. It is very, very marginal for cars to make it on fuel. But you know what we saw in that first stint of the race? If you're Joe Branch, you could have made it to the end from here if one more caution flies. For Cohn, Taylor, Guyon, and Anzaldo, I like to speak my mind in the commentary booth. I don't really understand this decision from them.
I don't either. Like I said, I don't either. Like, put yourself in a spot at least where you're even strategy, then gamble towards the end. Don't put yourself in a spot where you end up needing a caution flag in about 15-20 laps, because in most cases, in some cases it can work out, Arjuna. In a lot of cases it doesn't. In the way things have been trending, especially once things have calmed down specifically, this may be something that could cost them the chance to win this. If it ends up becoming what we've seen, where we had runs now for 15-20 laps, then there's a chance for it to work out.
I've got goosebumps. I've got goosebumps. Tension is in the air here in Texas. Texas only knows how to do it big, Justin. And you know what? It's delivering it out on track as well. Malone looks to be dropping to the rear end of the field. And let's talk about him very briefly here, Justin. He's 2 laps down. And you know, for our pole position sitter, this race has been won by that pole man on so many occasions. It's a shame. And you know what? This might honestly have been one of his biggest opportunities at a Lionheart Racing Series victory here.
He's been very quick all night. Trevor Malone has been. But that's what happens when you get over-aggressive on the pit entry, and that's exactly what he did, especially with the lap traffic. And that's why, Arjuna, so many drivers practice pit road entry and how deep they can go on their braking point comfortably on both fresh tires and worn tires. You don't put in that practice, you see exactly what can happen.
Third caution of the day here in Texas. It's Cone at the front of the field. He's got worn tires. He's got company with him, though. Let's go back to green flag racing here in the DMLC Racing Channel 200. Just about 45 laps to go in this race. And for cars that came down on pit road the last time around, it will be oh so close if they can make it to the end of this race. Question now becomes, how long does it take the likes of Barrett Rolfe and Tony Schowen to clear some of this lap traffic and catch up to the race leaders? Because, Justin, they will swarm those cars on old tires.
They're already swarming in Zardo, in fact, right now, trying to get to the inside, and at this point, just give some space and hope for the best, because we've seen it can be a couple tenths of a second difference in terms of the grip levels, potentially for some of these drivers already. Keep in mind as well that a couple drivers did top off in the 20s. We're going to be really close on the gas. Some of those drivers are fighting at the moment, have lost a ton of time, 10th on back.
Yeah, look at this swarm. It's Newsom in 10th position, who's about 2 seconds clear from these cars. Musselman, Bennett, Hacker, a number of cars that have worked their way up through the field are about 2 wide, 3 deep, exiting turn 2. Look back out front. Where's Cone in relation to Barrett Rolfe? About 4/10 of a second clear right now. But again, as Rolfe gets on past Guyon, as Rolfe gets on past Taylor, it will be interesting to see how hard it is. And Zaldo has not been able to hold off this chasing pack too much here, Justin. Schowen and Galvin already on through.
It was pretty clear for Enzardo. It was a track position play here as they go 3 wide right behind them. A little bit tight there, as right now Malone is struggling, and on the apron, Malone nearly spun it out.
I think he just about held on to that car, so we stay under green flag conditions. He lost a whole heap of momentum. That might actually help out that chasing group behind, Justin. They're 3 seconds adrift right now. They need some help to get up to the front of the field once again. We've got 40 laps to go, and look at this swarm of cars working their way through turn 4.
And I almost feel like at this point, with the fuel strategy coming into play, that pack may be more so towards the saving portion than they are towards the fighting portion, like it is towards the front. So I think those drivers are just trying to really be careful on how quick they run overall compared to the pace of the others and stay single file. But the battling continues to just go on, and these drivers just try and save while keeping the pace up in the 216 to 217 mile an hour range.
You know, if I'm Tony Schowen right now, I am very, very happy, Justin. Tucked up behind not 1 but 2 cars. He was doing some mega fuel saving before. I think he might be one of the favorites here at the front. I'm not sure what your thoughts are, but the likes of Schowen and Stouffer, those Adrenaline Motorsports teammates, they'll be working together. They'll be on the radio. They are side by side right now. They can work together to get to the front of this field.
And when it comes to various types of racing, especially, say, super speedway racing, you communicate a ton over the radio to make sure of, okay, what's my fuel mark? How much fuel is in the tank? Okay, X amount of gallons, we can make that work. X amount of gallons, okay, we need to save an extra a little bit more. So all that communication and data is going to be very vital here at this part of the race to make sure they can make it here. So right now, though, up towards the front, Rolfe wants that race lead with the fresher tires.
Jason Galvin almost got swarmed 3 wide. Schowen slips it down the inside. Stouffer will come around the outside. They're almost 4 wide. Entering in towards turn 3. Mark Cone is still able to hold on just about. Matt Taylor doing a very impressive job to block the momentum of Stouffer on the high line. But now, cars on fresh tires, they migrate to that high line, Justin. How long will it take before Cone and Taylor drop like a rock?
That's going to be the big question here, and the tough part is for Rolfe is getting it done on the high side with them not wanting to give up the bottom line. Keep in mind that fuel also has to be a thought process of, okay, these drivers are going to have to pit eventually. Why not save with them? That also has to pop, but the problem is you need to kind of get to the bottom to be able to do that properly, and they just are not holding on to the said bottom.
I don't know if Rolfe is enjoying that outside line so much. That car does not seem stable. Galvin tries to get to the inside of Matt Taylor. He forces his nose. That's the opportunity. Watch for Rolfe and Schowen to slip it down the inside now of that number 8 car, Justin. That might release the pressure, but Cone, very importantly, has a little bit of breathing room to work with right now.
Indeed. Right now, Jason Galvin's played it out very well. But at this point, just work with Mark Cohn, just stay in a line, and just think big picture here again. Has to be the thought process here with 32 laps to go, knowing he has to come down.
Working lap 102 of 133, excuse me. We've had 3 cautions so far, nowhere near the most that this race has had. And to be fair, Justin, these drivers have put on a show for us. Jason Galvin wants to get to the front now and looks to the outside line. Can he make it work?
Is he comfortable on the gas is also a big question of if he's going to be able to make this work, as here comes Rolf to take away that second position.
Taylor's still stuck outside. Where are the 2 adrenaline teammates, you wonder? They're still riding around, Justin. They are probably saving fuel. Let's jump on board with Tony Schowen right now, in fact, and work our way down in towards turn number 1 and see exactly what the number 31 is doing. In fact, not much fuel saving going on, Justin. He's only really lifting for clean air right now.
Yeah, and right now there's not a lot of it popping up right now as Christopher able to get the run on the high side, in fact. A little bit squirrely for Tony Schowen right that time off the corner.
And we are very early in this championship, but to start a season off with 2 consecutive podiums, that's a statement, Justin. And when we have the returning beast that is the Dallara DW12, it is racing very similarly to the last time the real-life cars came here as well. This specific generation of the IndyCar body kit, it really is. We looked at that schedule at the start of the race. We've got some incredible tracks, varying tracks as well, but Motegi and Texas, by no means similar. They both delivered outstanding races.
They have so far. This has been an incredible race. Yes, it's been bottom dominated by the race leader to be able to keep clean air. But it's been incredible to see the fighting from second on back and how things have formed out so far, especially for drivers trying to utilize that seam to try and squeeze on down and get momentum to make passes and see if they can make it work. Be that one driver who can make that work. It's been incredible. But here's the thing, for Mark Cohn, has to come in very soon. Now is reaching 38 laps this time by on this stint. Same for Taylor and company. So this is now the situation where they need a caution to happen pretty soon, or else they're out of contention here and it opens up the floodgates.
Well, you know what we also saw that last time across the line was Galvin was very, very close in terms of the delta between first and second. It might be a photo finish at the line, Justin, and if you've got those slightly more worn tires, it might benefit that car on the outside line. But what we did see coming down into turn 1 was Galvin lose a whole heap of momentum. You do not want to be side by side coming across at the white flag. It's all about that run that you can work out of turn 1 on the final lap.
Especially to make a pass down the back straightaway. And that's been the tricky part throughout the day, especially with some of the aero wash and especially with the defensive moves being done up towards the front. So I think it could come down to who's willing to be the most aggressive while doing it cleanly here with the way things have been playing out in this race.
Left side of the screen, you can see the stint lengths. Cohn now ticks up to 40 laps complete on the stint. He's in the fuel window. Pit stops imminent then. For the likes of Cohn, Taylor, Guyon, and Anzaldo. By the way, if you're curious, Anzaldo and Guyon, they've fallen about 2 seconds off the leading pack right now, Justin. It did not work out necessarily the way they thought, but by the same token, they are in a very good track position right now. If something were to happen as we go 3 wide into turn 1, Barrett, Rolf up into second.
That I agree with, because absolutely they are. But that especially was the play for the 08 and the 6 machine, who were in 9th and 10th position. They were deep in the field. For Mark Cohn, that was the question mark of, okay, how is this going to play out here? And this has gone back towards the race trends of longer runs towards this middle stage. There has been a car that had trouble down the back straightaway. James Krahula slowed down the back straightaway. No caution flag.
So we stayed green. Krahula very slow, and in fact, I think we'll be coming down onto pit road. Yes. Let's see if we can spool up the replay, Justin. Talk us through what you see.
And this seems like some trouble afoot for James Grahula coming off of turn 2. Was one of the drivers who topped off, coming to 1 to go. Clips the apron in 1 and 2, way too low. Gets stuck on the apron, locks it up for a good half a straightaway. And actually slams the safer barrier with the left side tires. Adds a bit of damage to some of that chassis potentially. So just a bit of a mistake running on his own. Just getting too low on the bottom of the racetrack. And now has lost a couple laps as a result. Now 3 laps down.
But you know what, Justin? Fair play to him. Very good hands there to hold on to that car. That might have been our 4th caution of the day. That would have really helped out the likes of Mark Cohn. He's now getting swarmed around the outside. I think Barrett Rolfe will get into the race lead. And indeed, as we cross the start-finish line to complete lap 114, it is Barrett Rolfe that leads here in the Lone Star State.
Matt Taylor and George Zardo both came down. As now, here comes the signal. Mark Cohn will sacrifice the race lead, will have to come down this time.
Can he do it safely? It is a very tricky entry down onto pit road. We jump on board, straddles the seam, and Cohn, with that DMLC Racing Channel on board, safely onto pit road. Now has to spot his box, Justin. This is the most important stop Cohn has had since the start of the season.
It was a very, very big gamble of hoping for more attrition to come into play, but now it's the matter of can he keep it on the lead lap for a shot to continue to try and battle later on in this race. That's the biggest question.
Sorry, excuse me. Malone also down on the lane, and you're right, that is the biggest question. Already down 1 lap. He is going to need a miracle to achieve some kind of result from this. He's down in 19th position, Justin, and what a disappointment it will be for him. Before we talk more about Cohn, though, breakaway at the front. Christopher, Barrett Rolfe, they have an 0.8 of a second gap back to Jason Galvin here. And Justin, Christopher, after not qualifying, after starting at the back of the field, he's in 2nd position, and he wants a race victory.
What an impressive drive it's been for Chris, to say the very least. And now it's the matter of will he be able to save enough gas as well as Barrett Rolfe now that they have some clean space. And now a separation amongst these top 2 by 1.8 seconds over Jason Galvin and company. This is going to be tight.
This is ideal as well. It's not just tight, it's exactly what Stouffer would have wanted. For his teammate, they're 3 wide with some lap traffic. Not exactly what I think Tony Schowen would have wanted. After 4th position in qualifying, he looks behind as Alexis Newsom with a lot of momentum to the outside. These cars 3rd on back, Justin. Look at Newsom out to the outside line, and side by side, Jason Galvin gets swarmed.
And Galvin really started backing it down, I noticed. Right before that situation, lost about 0.3 or so before that 3-wide scenario. So for Jason Galvin, I wonder if he feels like he's not going to be able to make it, and that's why he's really backed it down to 2:06 in the corners.
He's fallen behind to the tail end of this pack, maybe just working on that fuel saving at the line. It's 14 laps to go here at the 1.5 mile track. 13 laps to go as we cross over into lap 121. Justin, I do not think these cars can make it to the end from here. Christopher, Barrett Rolfe, they're swapping around for the race lead. They're working lap 35 on their stint.
This would have to be the longest stint of the race, potentially 47 laps. And the most anyone's made at Arjuna has been including caution flag laps, about 45. That brings into the question about the drivers who topped off. Jeff Murray, for example, is currently 22 seconds back, yes, in 17th. But he's got one of the shortest stint totals in the entire race. Vern Hawkins, Matt Houston, Dean Mall, all those drivers have the least amount of time left they need to go on this stint. They are the closest to trying to make this work.
Last week's race winner, he was involved in that 2nd caution of the day, has his damage repaired. What can he do then on the strategy? You can hear the amount of fuel saving into the corner as well. He's getting swarmed. Not sure who that is as they go 3 wide on the exit of 2. There comes Anzaldo to get on past as well. And Anzaldo down in 22nd position. This is fascinating, Justin. We've got cars on pit road. Ron Hacker, the latest who's decided to come and blink. Meanwhile, Barrett Rolfe has tucked himself behind Christopher. I think is doing the fuel-saving job of the lifetime.
Yeah, really trying to utilize 5th gear. You can see staying up there until the start and finish line, up to 6th now. And you can tell just by how much speed it's trying to lift right about here to be able to, as well with the arrow watch, just trying to make sure they come in. There is a ton of lap traffic up the road, though. And those are some of the drivers who are also among some of your top-offs, as well as several laps down.
This is fascinating. This is, once again, really proving to be an intriguing race. Look at this group of cars as well, Justin. It's about fourth on back, excuse me. Now Jeff Seong has rocketed his way up the field. And look at the chasing pack behind. You've got Vern Hawkins, AJ Musselman, Tony Schowen, Chris Fowler, and Jason Galvin. I have a feeling the likes of Schowen, Fowler, and Galvin have gone into heavy fuel-saving mode. They've really fallen off the back right now.
Yeah, they definitely are in heavy fuel saving. How about 6/10 off the lead pack right now to try and save gas some of these machines? The pace has also slowed down in general by 3 to 4 tenths. But I think it's more so the concern of how much fuel is in the tank overall for some of these machines, because I don't know, we might see drivers run out on the final lap, if not 2 laps to go.
In traffic are your race leaders. Rolf back to the front. Now, your rookie in this series, what a debut it's been for him. He really does enjoy the Dallara Indy cars, and great to see him in future Lionheart competitions as well. Stouffer, by the way, has lost about 0.3 of a second. I wonder if he's coming down onto pit road. No, it was DJ Clark that we saw, GSRC's own. So more and more cars, Justin, reaching the end of their tank capacities, and one by one, they're going to start falling like dominoes.
And I think Stouffer is trying to save a lot here, to say the very least, as some drivers now very slow indeed. And some temper starting to flicker on the radio from that.
Oh, Alex Guyon, that's contact with Jason Galvin. And Guyon, who was down a lap already, Justin. I don't know if Galvin is going to appreciate that too much. Potential damage to the left rear of a car that's a race contender, I should say. Guyon tried that risky strategy call. It did not work out in his favor.
Yeah, a huge mistake at that time, but Christopher and Barrett Rolf are continuing to just go swapping back and forth at this rate. We are under 3 laps to go, and they've really backed it down an additional couple miles an hour.
Lap times are now almost 1 second slower than at the start of the run. We have 3 laps to go. It will be 2 laps to go at the line here, Justin. 3 miles. You know what? Alexis Newsom. Oh, here comes Chris Stouffer down onto pit road. He's out of fuel. Barrett Rolf will stay out there. This is going to be oh so close.
Can Barrett make it an extra lap and a half is the big question. He's been really trying to save going back and forth. Only 2:12 down the back straightaway. He's been one of the quickest drivers. An impressive debut for Rolf. And now, no, he can't make it.
This is going to give Alexis Newsom the potential chance at victory here today. She is clear of the rest of the field by about 5 whole seconds. And what a result this will be for a rookie in this championship. Less than half a lap to go for Alexis Newsom in the number 63 car. And wow, what a race the Texas Motor Speedway has delivered. We go racing the only way Texas knows how, and Alexis Newsom wins the DMLC Racing Channel 200, presented by SimSnap Photography, with a fuel save race all the way to the end. Congratulations to the rookie. And Justin, 2 rookies have won in consecutive weeks here in the Lionheart Speedway Series. The established contenders, they better show up the next time we go racing for round 3.
And it was to the point where Alexis ran out of gas coming to the start and finish line, Arjuna. What a race, and it was the question of, could they stretch it? The longest run of the race? We got that answer. Wow, to say the very least. Wow.
And the impressive thing there, Justin, is Tony Schowen ends up 3.8 seconds back from Newsom. You saw how hard Schowen was saving there, but for Newsom, she calculated the number precisely. She hit it, and she is running out of fuel down into pit road. No donuts in HyperX victory lane for Alexis Newsom, but I'm sure this will be a very gratifying feeling.
Very gratifying and very ecstatic, because Newsom improved the pace compared to Twin Wing Motegi off the jump, was top 5 all race, and in the end able to stretch the fuel long enough to come away with the checkered flag. A big victory for the rookie.
Absolutely incredible. And you know what, Justin? For the second week in a row, I'm almost speechless at the checkered flag. I didn't know what I was necessarily expecting coming into this championship with the Dallara DW12, a relatively old car on the iRacing service, but it was designed with oval racing in mind, and it shows for the second week in a row. Here are your Carnox race results, and it is the rookie, Alexis Newsom, that takes victory in dramatic fashion. Tony Schowen in second for Adrenaline Motorsports. His second consecutive podium finish this season. He'll be starting off with a rather nice championship lead. Chris Fowler in third for Team Race First Fed. And Jim Brooks in fourth, another independent driver, and then you have to go back a further 5 seconds to find last week's race winner, Dean Moll in the number 23. Vern Hawkins across the line in 6th, Jason Galvin after some late race fuel saving across the line in 7th, Barrett Rolfe, the last car on the lead lap, in 8th. Unfortunately, a second consecutive disappointing race result for Mark Cohen. He ends up in 9th, but that strategy call, that could have gone either way. Matt Taylor in 10th will work through a very big field of cars here. Chris Stouffer in 11th, Brett Bennett in 12th, George Anzaldo, Joe Branch, Matt Houston, Alex Guyon, AJ Musselman, Jay Seong, Paul Jenkins, Jeff Murray. They're 11th through 20th, all 1 lap down. You have to go back to 23rd and Eric Schaus to find the first car struggling slightly more. Ron Hacker, Trevor Malone, DJ Clark, James Krahula, late race issues for them for the first of our non-finishers. Craig Forsyth, Adam Young, and then Mike Rigney rounding out the top 30 here. Alexander Van der Sant in 31st. Matt Wagner, Emerson Santos, Chris Lanini, Luis Gonzalez, Nunez, Kren Hacker, Charles Teed, Jake Wright, Tyler Groff, and Joe Hassert. I'm a little bit shocked there, Justin, at the number of cars that did not finish, but of course, 3 cautions in today's race, and we did see some rather big incidents as well.
Yeah, especially that big crash down the back straight away, but for Alexis, I think going to be very, very, very ecstatic after a massive strategy call. Only 8 drivers in the end, finished on the lead lap as well, Arjuna. That's how crazy this finish got. Mark Cohn, after having to come down the pit lane with about 20 laps to go, still came away with the top 10.
Incredible, and I did think that maybe it could work in his favor. I don't necessarily think that's the way that I thought it would work. Let's then go to the HyperX post-race show, because the Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows that we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit www.hyperxgaming.com, and don't forget to use the promo code Lionheart15, that's LIONHRT15, for 15% off all orders. Standing by in HyperX victory lane, it is your race winner, a second consecutive rookie, Alexis Newsom, and she is standing by with Justin Prince.
Alexis, you were able to make the fuel work. You were able to make it to the checkered flag. How are you feeling coming away with a big-time victory tonight?
Oh, I can't really believe it. I didn't think that would work in my second race in Lionheart.
When you noticed that it would become a fuel mileage race, what kind of went through your head knowing that it was going to be tight? The longest run drivers had to make it on gas today, 47 laps.
Well, as soon as we came out of the pits, I noticed how close it was. And I started fuel saving, and everyone was going really hard, so I just backed it down and waited. And when I thought I had enough, I took off.
Overall, what do you think it means to be able to go back-to-back rookie victories so far this season in what's been an incredible start to the Speedway Series? What does it mean to be able to break through for this victory here today?
Oh, it means a lot. This is only my second race in the DW12, so I'm very happy to be able to get such a good result for the series and my sponsor.
What's your approach going to be now as you're in a great points position as a result here at this start? or potentially what's your approach going to be for the closing for the next few races for this season?
Well, the same way it's been for the first two. Try to minimize mistakes and take advantage of any opportunity I can. Always monitor the fuel. Helped last week too. So, just same thing going forward. Hopefully it works out.
Absolutely. Congratulations on the victory tonight.
Thank you.
So Alexis Newsom, our second rookie winner this season so far. Now let's bring in someone who's not a rookie, Tony Schowen. Tony, very entertaining race there. Strategy did not play in your favor. Did you necessarily see Alexis Newsom scampering on past you to claim victory by almost 4 seconds there?
Yeah, I knew when I started when I noticed I needed to save fuel, and he was hanging out behind me, and then he blew by me, and I still needed to save. I was like, oh crap, if this goes the rest of the way, I'm gonna get P2 at best. So I knew I was in trouble, but at least I knew I was gonna be up there though.
What was that race like, Tony? It was up and down for us in the booth in terms of the way the action was, you know, kind of going. When you saw a number of cars not come down on that last caution, did you guys realize it was a fuel save race and a little bit surprised by that decision from the number of cars?
I guess I was surprised. When that stint started, I didn't think it would be a fuel save stint, but then I backed off and there was like 7 cars in front of me, and there's no point in fighting with those guys. So I looked at my fuel and I was like, ooh, we got enough laps left here where I can save behind this giant wall of wind in front of me. And so from that point on, it was a fuel save race for me when I dropped back in that little pack there.
What's it been like these first couple of weeks, Tony, and what's a new and old car? Because it's been a couple of years since I think you've really had to get behind the wheel of the DW12. 2 consecutive second place finishes. Last week was a little bit more of a struggle. Sets you up very nicely in a championship fight now.
Yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised. And it's a lot of reminiscing driving this car. And you know, it's not easy switching back between the IR18 and this car. There are pretty decent differences between them, especially not being able to use your tools. So yeah, it's definitely been a lot of fun, and definitely a great start to the season. I'm really happy.
Well, congratulations, Tony. Go celebrate with your teammates. We'll see you next time for round 3. So that was Tony Schowen for Adrenaline Motorsport. One more driver to speak to, Justin. It's Chris Fowler, who's standing by from the HyperX victory lane.
Yes, indeed. Chris Fowler, also a strong run tonight from 12th to 3rd. Chris, first things first, talk us through your strategy in terms of how things played out, especially with it being so tight on the fuel.
Oh, yeah, well... It was difficult. I basically wanted to survive, make no mistakes. I knew that it was going to be close. I figured at that last caution we were going to have at least one more caution, because I didn't think any of us could make it. I think it was 43 laps of green flag. I didn't think there was any way that we were going to make it. So I was just gambling for another caution. I know those guys that stayed out, they were gambling for that same caution. And then with like 20 laps of the run, I'm like, man, this is going to go green, and I'm not going to make it. So I just started lifting, drafting where it could. And happily, I finished with like 0.1 gallon left in the tank. So we just crossed the finish line in 3rd with just a tad bit of gas left. So happy with 3rd. It was a good run. The fuel mileage race caught me at the Motegi last race, so glad to be on the good end this time.
In your opinion, what made this race so difficult? Because it looked like for you're in the midst of a lot of fighting throughout the race tonight.
It was just so difficult to pass. Trying to pass the guy on the bottom line, as long as they hold that bottom line, you just could not get around them. So just trying to find clean air and find a way to get underneath that guy in front of you. It's just difficult. We were 2 and 3 and 4 wide at one point through 3 and 4. So it was just crazy. Just try to survive, find clean air, and try to get to the front.
Of course, how would you describe your start of the season as well? Because it's been an eventful season so far, to say the very least. You, for example, have had some eventful moments so far this season.
It's been crazy across all the Lionheart series for me this year. But so I'm happy. Third place, bring it up, go up in the points. I struggled at Motegi. We just had that last that last caution caught me a lap down, and those guys made it with that last caution and kind of put me at 16th. So just happy to turn that around, and hopefully going forward we're gonna have a good season and keep fighting for those wins.
Absolutely, Chris. A strong run tonight. Overall, how would you rate your performance?
A-. We didn't win, but we brought home third, so I'm happy we survived. We didn't have any incidents. We stayed out of the wrecks. Just had a really good, clean race. I'd like to thank Donate Life and the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation for coming on board this year and supporting me. So thanks to them. Thanks to George, HyperX, SimXperience, Mark Cohen with the DMLC Racing Channel. Those guys are awesome that helped put on this entire series. So really thankful for those guys giving me the opportunity to race here.
Congratulations on the run, Chris. Back to you, Arjuna.
Thank you.
So post-race interviews done, and Justin, let's wrap up here with our HyperX post-race show from round 2. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time from the Milwaukee Mile for our first short track race of this season. And based on what we saw today, that will be a very different type of race, but nevertheless hectic, and I'm expecting just as much chaos as today.
Yeah, short track race essentially at the Milwaukee Mile, a historic circuit for when it comes to these open wheel machines. I think it's going to be a fun race overall, though, because there's a chance for a lot of battling back and forth. There's a lot of chances, though, for attrition to pop up, especially at that type of circuit. I think it's going to be a tricky one, to say the very least, as the lead into our first Triple Crown race right afterwards at Homestead, Miami.
And, of course, the additional complication that Triple Crown race is not one of the double points races, but Homestead Miami, one of those 1.5 milers that always races very, very interestingly in an IndyCar. I will ask you, Justin, we were talking about Atlanta Motor Speedway in our broadcast earlier today. If you had to pick just one of these tracks, which do you think is going to be one that, for those watching on RaceSpotTV and ESTV, they should be tuning in to watch as maybe the example for why this DW12 really did produce some amazing races in the real world?
I think, again, it's going to be one where you want to watch Milwaukee Mile to put on some great racing, but I think Homestead Miami is also going to put in some great racing, especially with the fact where for both the retro and the IndyCar series, it was a track where you've seen lots of back and forths, lots of drivers carrying momentum from multiple different lines around the racetrack with the progressive banking and going 3 wide around the entire field. I think it's going to be an exciting race to emphasize why you want to see Homestead Miami for that upcoming race.
That will be April 19th. We've got 2 races in April to look forward to, but it's time to say goodbye for now. Just a reminder as well, you can keep involved with all things Lionheart at Lionheart Series across the social media. If you want to follow us on RaceSpotTV to watch all the great sim racing series we get to cover on a daily basis. We had 5 broadcasts on a Monday night. Absolutely incredible. Hit the red subscribe button and the bell next to it to get notified every single time we go live with the great sim racing series we get to cover. A couple of thank yous to get to then, and let's start it on off with the DMLC Racing Channel. Looking for entertaining sim racing content? Look no further than the DMLC Racing Channel. Follow former Lionheart Retro Series Driver of the Year Mark Cohen's racing escapades as he battles for wins and avoids wrecks with cat-like reflexes, all while providing commentary sure to make you laugh, cry, or both. Follow along by subscribing to the DMLC Racing Channel on YouTube and like his Facebook page at the DMLC Racing Channel. The Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary Ultra Comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperxgaming.com and don't forget to use promo code Lionheart15, that's LIONHRT15, for 15% off all orders.
The SimXperience AccuForce Pro V2 is the premier professional simulation racing steering system. The key to its incredible realism is the groundbreaking direct drive motor control system, providing a driving experience that is second only to the real thing. For more information on the entire SimXperience ecosystem, visit SimXperience.com.
For sim racers, the Butt Kicker Gamer 2 or Simulation Kit adds the missing driver-to-car connection, bringing more realism to your sessions. By accurately responding to in-game audio, you can feel the track like never before, providing increased vehicle handling and faster lap times. Are you ready for the most immersive experience in all of sim racing? For more information, visit thebuttkicker.com, and don't forget to use promo code LION2021 for 20% off all orders.
Minus 273 is the premier name in karting gloves. Their industry-leading gloves are super lightweight and durable, made of breathable polyspandex. Whether you're a kart or sim racer, Minus 273 gives you the control to reach victory lane. For more information on Minus 273's full line of gloves and apparel, visit minus273.biz. Don't forget to also use Minus 273 LHRS15. That's Minus 273 LHRS15 for 15% off orders.
It's not just these names, there's a whole team behind the Lionheart Racing Series. The Lionheart Speedway Series is powered by the DMLC Racing Channel, and for more information on all the sponsors up on your screen, visit LionheartRacingSeries.com. We'll return in a couple of weeks' time for more oval action here in the Lionheart Speedway Series, but eyes now are focused on the Lionheart IndyCar Series and the Long Beach Grand Prix that will take place in just 2 days' time live on RaceSpotTV. For the team behind me, my name is Arjuna Kankipati. I've been joined by the one and only Justin Prince. We've had TV cameras provided by Istvan Ballo and TrackCams22.com. Additional car cameras provided by RaceSpot's own Tyler Maxson. Thank you for tuning in. More Lionheart competition to be found on RaceSpotTV on a Wednesday. But for now, it's more rookies celebrating, and Alexis Newsom is in HyperX Victory Lane.